On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, is the MVP race over? Who should win the award between SGA and Nikola Jokic? Plus, how the Thunder did this week and what to look forward to this coming week, as there's a lot of lessons that you can learn whenever they're facing off with these playoff teams.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. On today's show, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder's week that was, splitting with Denver, what that all means, the MVP race, and previewing the week ahead for the Thunder. Joining us today is Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on social media, but let's talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, how you doing today?
Doing great, a little bit tired. We're still all, I think, just sort of winding back and trying to figure out daylight savings, which I still don't know why that's a thing. I feel like we're past that, but some fun basketball being played, and I'm ready to talk about it with you.
Yeah, I mean, it was cruel, in my opinion, to have daylight savings, a noon game, and a back-to-back all just thrown at us. But have an off day today to recharge. Got a huge game against Boston here tomorrow, so that'll be big time for all of us. I guess today, as this episode's coming out. But Michael, the Denver. Let's work backwards on the week review. The Denver back-to-back is the most talked about couple regular season games that we've had. The Thunder split those two games. Let's just start initially with your overall thoughts of, now that it's washed out 1-1, and what happened Sunday, what happened Monday. What is your opinion now as we sit with these two teams and the whole season series behind us?
I want a playoff series between those two teams. That's what I want. But overall, it hasn't really changed much. I mean, they split it, so it's not a big deal. We've seen different iterations of this with just Chet by himself. We've seen Chet and Hartenstein. We've seen Aaron Gordon playing some, not playing some. Jada about for a second half. But I said this after the Thunder blew them out on the Sunday afternoon game, that matinee game, of this doesn't change my opinion, and let's see what happens the next game. And I feel the same way after the Thunder lost that game, where there are definitely things you can point to of like, okay, let's see how the team adjusts to that. But long term, I think that you can look at both those games. I don't want to say a wash, but neither of them make me feel any differently in terms of how long this series would go or who I feel like would win the series.
Yeah, and it didn't change my opinion in that regard either, just because we knew it was going to be a long series. No one was predicting before this season series wrapped up that it'd be shorter than 6-7 games. And for that to happen, you're going to incur losses. Both teams were missing massive pieces in each of their losses. You know, Gordon not playing Sunday, not playing but 5 minutes Sunday, not playing at all yesterday. J-Dub not playing the second half yesterday. And those two factors changed things greatly. I think that we kind of learned what we already knew. We already knew Jokic was awesome. We already knew Shai was awesome. We already knew that the Thunder were a deeper team. We already knew that the Nuggets, without that depth, still have a supporting cast capable of winning games and winning series and getting to the Western Conference Finals and possibly beyond. And so we all just knew that this was going to be a very hard-fought series. And one that doesn't have a ton of separation. And so when that happens, I kind of default to home court advantage. I kind of default to, who has a deeper roster, because if you're going to play a 7-game series after playing 2 series already, likelihood of depth being important is higher, because for Denver, for example, especially because the Thunder are going to have a little bit of an easier path with the 1 seed, like Denver's going to have to get through a couple 6-game series in route to the Western Conference Finals, and I think that they're going to do it. I think that they can do it, but it just is taxing over time, and that's where I think that the depth could be important. But overall, I thought that the formula, like the formulaic way that each team won these last 2 nights, is just what they're going to have to repeat to try to win 4 times. Like the Thunder shooting going cold and the Nuggets role players being awesome last night, on top of their top 2 guys being awesome. Like that's how Denver wins a game. That's how Denver wins the series against OKC. On Sunday, the Thunder just gutting it out the whole game, where it's, they're down 1 after the first quarter, up 1 after the second quarter, up 3 after the third quarter. They somehow grow a 10-point lead with Shai on the bench, and then Shai comes in and pulls them away and wins the game, like that's the Thunder's formula for winning a game and for winning this series. So it's just going to come down to who can repeat that process 4 times out of 7 games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I really enjoyed sort of the chess match between Michael Malone and Mark on certain things. I mean, we don't often see this in the regular season, but I thought it was really cool to see sort of the counter gamesmanship of a back-to-back where we saw some real adjustments in real time a day later from Michael Malone, where they played defense a little bit differently on Shai, doubled him a little bit earlier, threw in some weird zones and man concepts that really sort of got the Thunder off balance. But overall, I'm right there with you of what you got was a microcosm of both teams and how they want to play and how they want to win. In the same way that like the Thunder had a lot more, generated a few more turnovers in the first game, really helped them out. They didn't generate as many in the second game. And in big part, it really helped that the Nuggets were playing with a lot more pace. They're the number 1 fast break team in the NBA. They average the most points on the break in the league this year. The Thunder are the best defense in the league on the break, but you get a guy like Jokic and just give him a couple extra seconds and a few more opportunities, they're going to score more on those chances than they are on the Thunder in the half court. But overall, yeah, it's the same thing that we've talked about before of just which role players are going to show up. Are the Thunder going to go cold? Which guys are going to show up for the Nuggets? And overall, I'm just ready to hit the fast forward button and see these two teams play a 7-game series.
Yeah, and I hope that we get the 7-gamer between these two teams in the Western Conference Finals, because I think that it'll be just entertaining from a basketball standpoint. I don't really care who you pick to win, because much like the MVP race we're going to talk about coming up, if I pick the Thunder to win in 7, which I am, that clearly means that Denver can win the series. So I'm not going to begrudge you if you think that the Nuggets would win Game 7. It comes down to a 1-game sample size where anything can happen in that 7th game. I just think it'll be very entertaining and very fun. And these two coaches will have plenty of stuff in store for us, because you look at this regular season game where, for the first time, Denver does the, blitzing and doubling and trapping Shai at the timeline, getting the ball out of his hands. Like, Mark admitted that was the first time they've seen that from Denver. And so it kind of threw them off kilter a little bit, obviously, but being a big adjustment game to game in like 30 hours that you weren't prepping for. And then the chess match move of Mark to put Dylan Jones at the scorers table and just never sub him in and just want to slow down Denver getting the ball in fast. So like Mark was explaining that Jokic is incredible at getting the ball from the referee and getting it in play in a hurry, because technically the ref has to touch the basketball before you're allowed to inbound it. But if you just pick up the ball, hit the ref with it, and then throw it in, now all of a sudden you're rocking and rolling down the floor before the defense gets set. And so Mark came up with this idea to put Dylan Jones at the scorer's table, which he did in the first quarter, and always have him there as a permanent sub. That way the ref would have to check with the Thunder, do you want to bring him in or not? And they'd always just opt out of bringing him in. But that way the game had to slow down for a second because there's somebody at the scorer's table. He eventually got called for a delay of game, which by rule, Mark is right. There is no rule that says specifically you can't have a permanent sub. I wonder, this is just complete speculation, I wonder if the reason why he got penalized for that was similar to what the Commanders did against the Eagles in the NFC Championship with the tush push, where the Commanders kept just jumping off sides over and over and over again, because at the end of the day, once you get down to the goal line, the inch that you give up on the offsides penalty doesn't matter because you're trying to time the snap perfectly to stop the play. But there's no rule against jumping off sides. But when you're purposefully doing it 6 or 7 times, Washington got in trouble for that, to where I wonder if there's like some sort of grievancing rule of like, yeah, it's not technically illegal to opt out of subbing, but you're doing this kind of on purpose, so now you get a delay of game. So I do wonder what that looks like moving forward. But it was just a weird night full of like both teams trying to pull out every trick that they had for the most part to get a win. I thought that was one of the more interesting stories of the season.
Yeah, the permanent sub, I asked Mark about that afterwards, and he gave a great answer on it, because I noticed Dylan going up there, and I was like, well, that's weird. And then foul comes in, doesn't sub in. Technical foul comes in, doesn't sub in. And you're like, well, what's sort of going on here? But Jokic, you're right. Like, he's great at it, and he has the benefit of being able to basically play tag with the ball with the referee and getting inbounds. And the Thunder, I've seen a lot of fans on Twitter complaining about, like, oh, the Thunder are saying that Jokic is cheating, or they want to slow the Nuggets down because they can't keep up. It's like, no, that's not the case. The Thunder don't care if it's a fast inbound or a slow inbound style. They just want it consistent for both teams, and they don't feel like guys like Lou Dort have that same, I guess, advantage or ability as a Jokic, where you can just hand the ball to the referee, get it right back. Where I think Lou Dort literally probably has to hand it to the referee, wait for a second, grab the ball, then go. And anyone who's played any pickup basketball or basketball at any level, that 1 second can mean all the time in the world when a defense isn't set. And on top of that, when you're playing with the greatest passer in the history of basketball, that's really going to matter too. And like I mentioned earlier, the Nuggets kill people in transition. They average 20 points a game on that. The Thunder, on average, hold teams to 11, best in the NBA. And the Thunder defensively in the half court have also been awesome. And the Nuggets are seeing that as an advantage of it's hard to get those turnovers for the Thunder. If we're up the court fast, we go one pass to Michael Porter Jr. in the corner, he shoots a three. There's not a lot that can go wrong there. There's not a lot of variance. So they're really minimizing a lot of the opportunities for the Thunder of getting those points in transition on the break on their own. But I'm right there with you. Thought it was super interesting to hear Mark's sort of explanation to it of going back to a Warriors game last year of not being able to get that sub in, which I sort of remember. It jogged my memory. But yeah, I think that it's going to be really interesting. And yeah, I don't know. The delay a game thing, it seemed like something almost, I don't want to project here, or I don't have any source on this, but it felt like almost one of those things where the refs were like, please stop showing us up about this. Can you just calm down? Like, we'll try to get a handle of it. Can you just sit him down and not make this a big thing? But I don't think it's technically a delay a game. If it's not like Mark is going, they're looking at the sideline. They're like, Mark, do you want to check him in? He's like, let me think about it. He's like, okay, no, it's very quick in that process, but it did its job in terms of slowing the Nuggets down for a little bit. But I think it was more of Mark just sort of making a statement and calling attention to something rather than some, like, I wouldn't even put it in the same category as Hack-a-Shack, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gamesmanship. I think that it is, playing the system and trying to create an advantage, just like Jokic is doing. Like, the line between gamesmanship and strategy is often blurred. It is a strategy on one hand for Jokic to get the ball in as quickly as he does, and it works successfully. It's also kind of gaming the system a little bit, but credit to him for being able to pull it off. So I don't think that this is something that the Thunder will go to a ton, but I do think that it was something that now that you see it, and every crew is going to see this. These refs do a ton of homework before each assignment. Like, everyone's going to see this now. Maybe it helps you on the back end without you having to ever do it again. But I think it is a strategy that he felt good about. And to his credit, no one else has ever thought of this. Like, you've seen plenty of teams get mad at Jokic for doing the same thing, or jealous. Let's say jealous of Jokic for doing the same thing, because they don't mind that he inbounds the ball so fast. They just wish that they could do it too. And Jokic is the best at getting the ball in quickly. So, no one else has thought of this, and Mark thought of it, and it just goes to his improvisation. It was almost Patrick Mahomes-like of the improvisation from Mark to just think of that on the fly and put Dylan up there. I thought it was awesome. I don't know how anyone could not think it was awesome. Both teams just trying to create advantages any way that they can, and it was really, really fun. The worst part about this game for me was the officiating crew for both sides. I felt bad for both sides because it hurt Denver, and they won. And I think that sometimes, like, even winners don't want to talk about the refs. It's okay to admit that the refs messed over Denver and they still won. They also messed over the Thunder because they messed over the entire game. They had a lack of control, they had a lack of consistency, and they have to be better. And that crew will be better. Like, there's no way that an NBA crew is that bad. They had a bad night, just like shooters have a bad night, just like podcasters have a bad podcast. Like, they had a bad night, and they'll get it right moving forward. But moving forward, we also have to talk about the MVP race. Who would we vote for, and do we think that the race is over? Let's talk about that coming up. But first, I want to say right now, our good friends over at Wayfair. Check out Wayfair today. Your home should reflect your style with Wayfair. It's easier than ever to make it happen. Whether you're looking for a simple refresh or tackling a big home project, Wayfair has everything you need in one place. Wayfair has a huge section of everything that you want for the perfect place and the perfect pieces for your home, no matter your space or budget. From cozy furniture to stylistic decor, kitchen essentials, outdoor must-haves, Wayfair has it all at the prices to fit your budget. Find the right pieces for your place with easy shopping and delivery. It's made simple to compare your styles and also order and arrive fast with free delivery from Wayfair. Go check them out today. That's wayfair.com to find something for your style today. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. every style, every home. Also want to tell you right now, but good friends over at TurboTax. TurboTax is there for you during this tax season because, as we all know, taxes, used to be sitting there wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. You're waiting, wondering, and worrying some more while they're getting done. But now taxes is matching you with a TurboTax expert so you can get your taxes done as soon as today. An expert that will take your taxes and give them the undivided attention as they work for your return. You'll get real-time updates on their progress, and you can focus on your day. As experts that will know how to get every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, and everything with 100% accuracy. All you have to do to get the most money back guaranteed is use TurboTax. No waiting, no wondering, no worrying anymore. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert today at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only on the iOS mobile app. It's going to be guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guaranteed. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Well, we're here talking about the MVP race. We're talking about the Denver game. We're talking about the week ahead as well with what the Thunder will face moving forward. But let's start with the MVP race here in the second segment. Michael, when you look at this race, to me, the head-to-head matchups obviously matter because they're a part of an 82-game season. But it's not the end-all, be-all, the way that people kind of were hyping this up as. And I get it because it's two national televised games. You want to give casual fans a big reason to watch. But it really shouldn't change the perception of the race. And the MVP race this year, I hate that it's so toxic because this is a year where both guys have a legitimate argument. Both guys are doing legitimately beautiful things on the basketball court, and both guys deserve to win the award. And you don't need to tear either one of them down. Like to me, this is a race where if I had a vote, I would vote for SGA because me personally in the MVP race, I value winning, and Shai has brought this team in the big, bad Western Conference, this Western Conference that we're all shaking in our boots about and as being the best conference in the world. And they're 11 games up on the 2 seed. They're further up on the 2 seed than the 2 seed is on missing the play-in tournament. And that's important to me. That matters to me for a guy who's doing this with the second youngest roster, for one of the youngest rosters, for a guy who's doing this with a team that's dealt with horrendous injury luck, but you'll never know it by their record. And he's putting up the individual numbers as well, leading the league in scoring, the ZPM numbers. You can do the advanced stuff, you can do the basic stuff, and Shai's having a great season. So I would personally vote for SGA. With that being said, when the NBA PR account after the year puts out the voters and who they voted for, I can't get up and criticize any Jokic voter. As long as you have one of the two in your number one slot and the other one in your number 2 slot, I don't have any problem with that ballot because what Jokic is doing is insane. What Jokic is doing is stuff we've truly have not seen before. And it might even be his best ever season. He's already won, 3 MVP awards. So I can't criticize anyone to vote for Jokic. What I find so interesting about this whole situation, I've wrote about this on Thunder and SI, is that as a lover of history and basketball and the game itself, I think a vote for Jokic changes everything about the future of the NBA because we've never continuously given the best player in the world, which Jokic is, the MVP award over and over and over again. And maybe we should have been. Maybe that was a fault of the past that we can now fix. But if you vote for Jokic this year, then find me the case of why you wouldn't vote for him next year. Because next year, what's Jokic going to do? He's going to average a triple-double. He's going to have the Nuggets as a top 4 seed, and we're going to look at that roster and say, man, Jokic is really helping them get to a top 4 seed. How is this supporting cast able to pull this off? And what's anyone else going to do next year? Do you really think that someone else next year is going to have an 11-game lead of over Denver and have that winning component? And if they do you really think it's going to be a guy who's leading the league in scoring by this much, who's gone on to have 4 50-point games, and he's had 3 straight 40-point games until it was snapped last night? there's no better case than Shai to dethrone Jokic. And if you give Jokic this award now, you've got to give him the next 2, 3, 4 awards, because that's how long he's going to be averaging a triple-double and how long he's going to be electric, barring injury. So it just changes the entire way we view this award. We've always let other guys, get their name and immortality. So I would be disappointed for Shai and for the league's history if he didn't win it. But Jokic is dang good, man.
Yeah, Jokic, I don't want to say it's a benefit because it is a curse, but in the MVP race, I guess it's a benefit. But his team is never good enough where he can just sort of coast to the regular season, because if he just coasts, they're going to be in the play-in. Like, that's the whole point. And that's something you've seen from like past MVP guys like LeBron, of just he doesn't have to go full balls to the wall in the regular season in the East to really get that playoff standing for his team. So he sort of took his foot off the gas. And I'm right there with you in terms of I would vote for Shai. Just the overall dominance that we've seen from this season, it's not even close in terms of the teams in the Western Conference, like you mentioned, the distance. And Shai's been awesome. He's having like one of the more efficient guard seasons since Michael Jordan's MVP days, and he's doing it at all 3 levels. He's gotten better. He's been a great leader. He's overcome some weird circumstances, like you mentioned, with Chet's injury, Hartenstein's injury, and then just how young the roster is. And just he's been the one consistent, just treading along, and he's been awesome. And you look at those plus minuses, and people talk about the supporting cast. Rylan, you and I have watched a lot of these games, and there have been plenty of times, for as dominant as this team has been this season, where it feels like you're holding on for dear life until Shai comes back into the game. And just because he blows the doors open late doesn't mean there wasn't any threat throughout the night. And I feel like that's some sort of common misconception. But I'm right there with you in terms of like, I want to enjoy both these guys. It's like the people who say it's like, well, you got to either pick Chet or Wemby. It's like, no, I don't. I like watching both of them because they're awesome. And you're just depriving yourself if you're going to villainize one guy over the other. And that's what it seems like we're at that point in the MVP discussion of, we're not talking about what each guy does well. We're just going and attacking the few things they don't do well, and that's all we're talking about, rather than sort of seeing 2 all-time peaks right now between 2 great players and those guys facing off. So I would vote for Shai. Like you mentioned, I couldn't be super, super mad at people who vote for Jokic. I don't think that this is something that is just guaranteed sustainable for him, because he's having just like a super, super efficient passing season. I don't know that that's going to keep up, or shooting season, rather. And I don't know that that's going to keep up, and there's injuries that can happen. And, the whole narrative thing, I think that would become a real thing in terms of voter fatigue. I don't know that that's something that we've just completely abandoned. It maybe is lessened now. But if a guy wins 4 out of the last 5, I think that would really start to set in, and the public perception of pressure of like, well, then who can beat this guy? Because Jokic is not this international superstar like a Michael Jordan or even LeBron. People weren't really having it. Like, we're old enough to remember LeBron losing the MVP to Derrick Rose, mostly off of narrative and the fact that he went to Miami and the media wasn't going to reward him for that. So there are other factors at play. I would vote for Shai, but realistically, this is one of the more interesting MVP debates we had in a very, very long time, and I'm interested to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun to follow it along and to see where everyone leans. Because to me, it's not you're not a bad guy if you vote for Shai. You're not a bad guy if you vote for Jokic. It comes down to what you as an individual value. Like, some people think that's an individualized award and the winning doesn't matter. Some people think the winning does matter. And some people have flip-flopped on that, right? Like, whenever Russ won his MVP award, the same people that thought winning was the most important thing, that's why they couldn't vote for Russ, now don't really value winning anymore. It's like you're constantly evolving, just like any other vote that takes place. You're constantly evolving on what your values are, of what you want to align with. And so if you want to align with Jokic and his Wilt Chamberlain-esque numbers, go ahead. If you want to align with Shai and his still gaudy numbers with the success behind him as a winner, go ahead, and we see where it all shakes out at the end of it all. But hopefully, we'll see the conversation change. That's the only thing I care about, really, is like, stop with the whole negativity from both sides. Thunder fans do it too. Nuggets fans do it. Everybody just stop. Just enjoy these 2 guys playing basketball, because they're a lot of fun. They're both seem to be like really great dudes. Like, just enjoy the games in front of you. But coming up, we'll preview the week ahead for the Thunder. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Skims, folks. I love Skims. Skims is incredible. You should be checking them out today because when I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family. So I gave it a try. And let me tell you right now, it lives up to the hype. You can always use a luxury pair of underwear. And let me tell you, I think Skims is very luxurious because they have every style that you'd want, from boxer briefs to classic briefs. It's all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I love the fabric, the breathable fabric. It moves with you and to help you keep everything in the right place. And with Skims, they're just so comfortable, so soft, and silky even is the texture. Shop Skims Men at skims.com and Skims Store. So let them know we sent you after you place your order by selecting podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu box that follows. And if you're looking forward to the perfect gift for yourself or for anyone else, Skims just launched their best shop ever, their best gift shop ever, with available in sizes for women, men, kids, even pets. I haven't gotten Gilmore Skims yet, but I think I need to treat her to some Skims for pets. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day, here with Michael Martin, Michael on Sports on social media. Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube to discuss the Oklahoma City Thunder and the week ahead. We've done MVP. We've reviewed the week, mainly talking Denver. But we did get our predictions correct with the Thunder only losing one game on that week. And now it's time for another week of predictions. Now, the Thunder play Boston, Detroit, Milwaukee before our next recording, Michael. And I think that regardless of who plays, this will be very fun to see how the Thunder match up and see what the Thunder do against three solid playoff teams. Obviously, Boston, the defending champs, and I think arguably the favorites to go win it again this year. Milwaukee gave you fits in the NBA Cup final. And then I love watching Detroit play basketball. I'm so glad that you're going to get to see two games against Detroit here down the stretch with OKC. But the preview aspect of this takes two different tones when you look at the injury report, because at halftime, J-Dub was ruled out with a hip strain, and we don't know yet. We're recording this at noon on Tuesday, so we don't know yet if he's going to play against Boston. We don't know yet what that return looks like for J-Dub. So let's do this with J-Dub first, and we'll preview all of this as if J-Dub is playing, and then at the end, we'll change it and say what our record would be if J-Dub's not playing. So if J-Dub's playing, first and foremost, with three playoff level teams ahead of you, what are you most looking forward to seeing from this team, or learning about this team, or just evaluating from this team?
The Boston matchup for sure, because we've seen these two teams play, and we saw Boston get out to an early lead. And we've seen Boston sort of play with their food, and I'm really interested to see how they respond on their own home floor, where there's a lot of hype and a lot of energy going into that game. It's a different type of energy, but it's going to be very similar to the Lakers coming in there recently with LeBron and Luka, and you could see the guys sit up in their chairs and have a little bit more excitement in their eyes from the Celtics, and they took it really seriously. Joe Mazzulla played Tatum and Brown 40-plus minutes, and you saw them go out there and kick the Lakers' butt and just take it to them. So they're capable of that, as we all know, and like you said, they might just be the finals, the favorites to win the title right now, but if Dub is playing, I think that's a super, super interesting matchup. In the same way that we were talking about Jokic limiting the Nuggets' turnovers, I just don't trust that Boston can handle a lot of that pressure. And what it's going to come down to is, as it seems like it always does with Thunder, of are your role players going to hit threes, and are the other team's role players going to hit threes?
Yeah, and I think the Boston matchup, especially because I hope that J-Dub plays, because I remember the Boston afternoon game in the Paycom Center where they did make the comeback, they did get the win, but that first half, the whole talking points, the whole narratives were about, man, this is really a matchup that the Thunder could use their double big lineup, and they just don't have it. So now just getting the pictures of what does it look like whenever you do have your double bigs against Boston, I think will be very interesting. I think that on that same note, having that size against Milwaukee compared to what you had in the NBA Cup final will be very interesting. And then Detroit, like, is sandwiched in here, but I think that the Detroit road atmosphere has been awesome this year. Detroit's home court advantage has been awesome this year. I love watching Cade Cunningham play. I'm curious about how Detroit handles the Thunder's defense. Like, if you get the best out of the Thunder's defense in that game and they're juiced up and ready to go, and they're giving you max effort, like, how does Detroit manufacture offense in that setting? And then also, how does the Thunder handle a Detroit team that refuses to go away? I mean, even if you build a 15-point lead, 20-point lead, they're going to keep punching, and so you're going to have to deal with that on the front end of a back-to-back. So I think that this week will be very awesome to watch for a Thunder standpoint. With J-Dub in the fold, let's do our predictions for that. With J-Dub in the fold, I'm going to go 2-1. Without J-Dub, I'll go 1-2.
I agree, and I have some reservations about the Milwaukee matchup, as we already saw with the NBA Cup matchup. But another thing I think that you can look at is, Chet played his first back-to-back yesterday, and I don't know that that's a guarantee that this is just how it is for the rest of the season, because that was a weird circumstance of a back-to-back at home. They get a noon start, so it's not a full 24 hours later to the 7 p.m. tip-off of the next game, or it's a little bit more than a full 24 hours. And that Detroit to Milwaukee, I feel like the Thunder might play it relatively safe and rest him on one of those sides of the back-to-back, whether or not Dub plays. But I think the Thunder probably get caught on one of these games. I don't think it's the Detroit one. I think that the Thunder is going to outlast them with too much talent. But whether or not Dub plays, I feel like they're going to get caught by either Milwaukee or Boston. But I'd say 2-1 optimistically, and at worst 1-2.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Michael. You've got a lot of great stuff already up and coming up on Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. So make sure you go subscribe to Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. But what have you got cooking up for the people to go check out?
By the time you're watching this, Permanent Subgate, the video about Mark and Dylan Jones and sort of that situation and looking into Jokic getting the ball a little bit quicker. I did a deep dive into that and just some of the minutia of that. And then later this week, I plugged it last week, but it's been a long process getting this video ready, is the stock market 2.0 of how the Thunder are dominating this regular season defensively, in major part due to winning the turnover battle and winning the stock battle of steals and blocks.
Go check those out. And you mentioned Permanent Subgate. I do wonder if, like, Mark's obsession with the rules, because this isn't the first time that he's, like, found a rule loophole.
Yeah.
I wonder if Mark's obsession with the rules does come from his Patriots fan background of, like, watching Bill Belichick just bend every rule possible to create every advantage possible. Because, like, every coach should know the rules, but, like, Mark knows the rules. So, like, I just think that maybe there's something there with his Patriots background. But go check out those videos from Michael Martin. Until tomorrow, or whenever we recap this Boston game, be good and be good to one another.